most intense period of my life because the fictional characters were more real to me, or at least as real to me as anything else that was happening. I was spending more time with them than I was with my own family. I was, 8 hours a day. I would be sitting huddled over my computer or scratching little drawings to try and figure out how to get from one panel to the next, or working out the dialogue.
In your Sandman comics, you created a whole cosmology that includes your own immortal beings and also all these gods from many different belief systems. I mean, you have Norse gods, you have Christian gods, Greek gods, Japanese gods. I read that when you were supposed to be studying for your bar mitzvah, you cajoled your instructor to tell you non-canonical religious stories.
Oh, yes. When I was, that was the joy for me of religion. The stuff that I loved was myth. And as a kid, my favorite books were things like Roger Lancelot Green's Tales of the Norsemen and Tales of Ancient Egypt. And when I was studying for my bar mitzvah, I was very lucky because I had a very orthodox cantor, Reverend Mael Lev, who I could get off the subject of the stuff that we were meant to be doing and onto the subject of wonderful, strangest parts of the Midrash, weird tales of commentary, and it was essentially, although I didn't know it at the time, the mythology of Judaism. It was the stuff that had crept off into the corners that became part of the oral tradition, and I loved that. I didn't know when I was 12 that not everybody knew that, for example, Adam had 3 wives, that Eve was his 3rd wife. I sort of vaguely assumed that everybody must know that because I'd managed to get that onto the subject, and I loved that. For the record, the first wife was Lilith, who then went off and had sex with demons, so
birthed
was sent away.
monsters.
And exactly, and spawned monsters and dark creatures. The second wife was made in front of Adam from the bones up, and he got to watch her being created, skin and nerves and hair and all, and was so revolted by this he wouldn't go near her, which is why God had to made her vanish and put Adam to sleep to create Eve, so that he wouldn't actually get to see the creation process. And I loved that story. And then as an adult, going to look for it, I found myself reading so many obscure books of Jewish mythology until finally I discovered it, I think in a Robert Graves book, and went, I hadn't hallucinated this, I didn't imagine it. It did actually exist.
Well, that idea of you as a kid listening to all these stories and stories that aren't part of the canon, it resonates so much with Sandman and also a lot of your other work, where there are these stories behind the official stories, and there's always something behind what you're perceiving in reality.
I think that for me seems like a way to talk about the world we're in. None of us exist in a world that is the same world that any of the rest of us live in. The world that's important is the world behind each of our eyes, which is something that none of the rest of us can access. And more than that, it's the strange impossible bits. The idea of dreaming always fascinates me. The idea that even the most normal people close their eyes for 6, 7, 8 hours a night, and during that time, for several hours, go absolutely and utterly stark staring mad, is beautiful. I think I love my dreaming process because one of the things that my dreaming process does is sort out stories for me. I will go to sleep stuck on what happens next. I will wake up and somewhere these boys in the back room have been moving heavy furniture around. They've been digging, they've been painting, they've been plastering, and they present me with the solution.
Neil Gaiman, thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful.
Neil Gaiman spoke with Fresh Air producer Sam Brigger. Gaiman's Sandman 25th Anniversary 6-part miniseries is collected in the volume The Sandman Overture. Tomorrow on Fresh Air, I'll talk with Andrew Haigh, the director of the new film 45 Years. It stars Charlotte Rampling and Tom Courtenay as a couple about to celebrate their 45th anniversary when a secret is revealed that calls into question many of the wife's assumptions about their marriage. Andrew Haigh also directed the film Weekend and was the showrunner for the HBO series Looking, about a group of gay friends in San Francisco. I hope you'll join us. Fresh Air's executive producer is Danny Miller. Our technical director and engineer is Audrey Bentham. Dorothy Farabee is our administrative assistant. Our associate producer for online media is Molly C.V. Nesper. Roberta Shorak directs the show. I'm Terry Gross.
Support for NPR comes from NPR member stations and from Mars Drinks, with workplace brewers and drinks for promoting productivity, collaboration, engagement, and well-being from the boardroom to the break room at marsdrinks.com/NPR. Mars Drinks, rethink the daily grind. And from Scribner, publisher of All the Light We Cannot See, Anthony Doerr's novel about a blind French girl and a German boy whose lives collide during World War II. All the Light We Cannot See is available online and in bookstores.
This is Alec Baldwin. Jimmy Fallon is known as the nicest guy in late night. Did you try mean material when you were younger? You didn't like it?
Yeah, I did. I tried to keep my act clean. My grandfather said, don't wear blue.
His training started early at home when he was listening to Rodney Dangerfield records with his parents.
They didn't want me hearing any dirty words, so my dad would take a car key and scratch out the F words.
The Roots of Jimmy Fallon. Take a listen at here'sthething.org.
WNYC is supported by Sony Pictures Classics, presenting Son of Saul, a new film directed by Laszlo Nemes about a Jewish prisoner determined to save a boy who he believes to be his son. Starts Friday, December 18th.
Up next, it's The Takeaway at 93.9 FM on AM 820. It's the World. And later this afternoon, All Things Considered with news and analysis at 4 o'clock right here on WNYC. It's still very warm for this time of year. Temperatures in the mid-60s, breezy with wind gusts as high as 36 miles per hour. Tonight, mostly clear with a low of around 43 degrees. Currently, it is 61 degrees and mostly sunny in Central Park at 3 o'clock.
This is WNYC, FM, HD, and AM, New York. Just keep listening.
What's your ringtone on that iPhone? The genius of Ireland in your Apple products and the genius of Apple in avoiding U.S. taxes. The Inversion 2.0. I'm John Hockenberry, and this is The Takeaway. Also, Fed interest rates going up. Is this a 9.0 seismic shift or a well-orchestrated mess for the global economy? The energy economy fights back against parrots, hoverboards, face plants, and exploding batteries. And Linda Ellerby retires. Nick News, the networks, and so it goes.
We would not lie to our audience. We would not talk down to our audience. We would work on the assumption that our audience was smart.
Share what you know. Tell us a story at 877-8MY-TAKE or tweet us at The Takeaway.
From NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Still reeling from the San Bernardino terror attacks a couple weeks ago, Los Angeles area schools are closed today because of an email threat. And if the sender threatens to attack schools with explosives, machine guns, and pistols, Police Chief Charlie Beck says investigators are looking into the origins of the email that was sent to a school board member.
The original document was routed to a European country, Germany, but the origin has yet to be determined, and we believe to be much closer than Germany.
A similar threat was sent to New York City, but city officials overseeing the nation's largest school district opted to keep schools open, calling Los Angeles' decision an overreaction. Back in Los Angeles, NPR's Nathan Rott says People are generally okay with the decision given the events of recent weeks.
Today was the first finals day, and so they said some students were a little dismayed, those that had studied, and some that had not were a little excited about the news. But I'm at a high school, so there wasn't as many parents here. Obviously, the people that I talked to here were concerned and said, yeah, everybody's been a little skittish since everything that's happened in San Bernardino and everything else, but said it's better to err on the side of caution with something like this.
NPR's Nathan Rod. President Obama has welcomed 31 new American citizens. NPR's Scott Horsley reports Obama used a naturalization ceremony to argue the U.S. should not close its doors to people fleeing poverty or persecution.
At a time when Republican presidential hopeful Donald Trump has called for a temporary ban on Muslim visitors to the United States, President Obama is celebrating immigration as a source of civic renewal. At a ceremony welcoming new citizens from 25 different countries, including Iraq and Congo, Obama said their story is now woven into a rich history of newcomers.
In the Mexican immigrant today, we see the Catholic immigrant of a century ago. In the Syrian seeking refuge today, we should see the Jewish refugee of World War II.
The new citizens waved tiny American flags as they stood to be sworn in. Scott Horsley, NPR News, the White House.
Saudi Arabia has formed a 34-nation military coalition to fight terrorism. More from NPR's Deborah Amos.
Alliance partners are mainly Sunni-majority Muslim states, including those with powerful armies, Turkey, Pakistan, and Egypt. The announcement is another sign the Saudis are staking out a muscular military role in the region. The kingdom has also been a target of Islamist militants. In Paris, the Saudi foreign minister added working details, an operation room based in Riyadh to coordinate the alliance, and a parallel effort to combat radical ideology. The alliance is striking for the countries absent, Iran, Saudi's main rival in the region, and Iraq, where ISIS militants have taken over large parts of the country. Deborah Amos, NPR News, Istanbul.
This is NPR.
This is WNYC in New York. I'm Jamie Floyd. As you've been hearing, the schools in Los Angeles are all closed after someone emailed a threat to the public schools. Officials here in New York City say public schools received the same threat, but they have deemed it a hoax. Police Commissioner Bill Bratton says the threat was specific, but not credible.
It is not something that we are concerned with. What we would be concerned with is overreacting to it. We will stay aware, we will stay involved, but we at all costs cannot start overreacting to what will probably be a series of copycat types of initiatives.
Bratton says he thinks Los Angeles officials may have overreacted in deciding to close the nation's second largest school system. The head of New York City's New York Homeless Services Agency is stepping down. Mayor spokesperson Karen Hinton confirmed today that Gilbert Taylor is leaving the post. Taylor, who was appointed in early 2014, will remain in an advisory position at City Hall. His departure comes at a time when Mayor Bill de Blasio has faced sharp criticism for a rise in homelessness. Nearly 58,000 people are living in shelters. An additional 3,000 or so are estimated to be living on the city streets. City officials say the department will undergo a comprehensive review to begin immediately. The city says the effort will be led by Human Resources Administration Commissioner Steve Banks and First Deputy Mayor Anthony Shores. This afternoon, mostly sunny, high near 61 degrees. Tonight, low around 43, currently 61 degrees in Central Park.
Support for NPR comes from Inada, Japanese maker of full-body massage chairs, including the Flex 3S, with pre-programmed shiatsu massages and full-body stretch sessions at inadausa.com. That's INADAUSA.com.
What a year it's been. The Supreme Court legalized same-sex marriage. The U.S. and Cuba reestablished diplomatic relations. Pope Francis visited New York City, and water was found on Mars. You heard about all of these events and so much more on WNYC. I'm Richard Hake. Please include WNYC in your year-end giving plans and help pay for another year of news and conversation. Visit WNYC.org or call 1-888-376-WNYC to make your tax-deductible gift now.
This is The Takeaway. I'm John Huckenberry. Thanks so much for listening. How many more days until Christmas has become how many more vulnerable moments in public spaces for me and my family until we are safe at home? for the holiday? That's the question people are asking around the country, and especially in Los Angeles. Reports of a bomb, a real sense of vigilance. But what is the threat to school children in Los Angeles, where thousands of families are scrambling after school authorities shut down the country's second largest school district? In each home where school children reside, suddenly the school closing turns every kitchen into a situation room. Who's where? Are they on their way home? Do they need a pickup? What's on the news? Are kids upset? Yvonne Condes is a mom with 2 sons in the Los Angeles Unified School District. She's also the editor of MomsLA.com. Yvonne, when you swung into action, what was it like today?
It was really upsetting. You know, my phone started buzzing early this morning. My older son was outside waiting for his carpool. You know, I ran outside. I talked to, you know, there's a lot of kids in the carpool, so I talked to one of the kids' moms. I called the other mom to tell her not to come, that we all had to go home. And then I just got on my computer and started tweeting about what was happening.
And it's a fine line. You have to be mobilized, but you can't upset the kids at the same time. You can't cause an overreaction. How do you do that?
So we've been talking about this for a while. I mean, even before this last what happened in San Bernardino, I wrote a piece about how, you know, I had to sit down and talk to my kids about what to do if there's a shooting.
Yvonne, how do you keep from overreacting, from giving a sense that children are going to be more alarmed with your reaction than a sense that actually we have the situation under control?
Well, we talk about it a lot, and I try to be really calm when I'm talking to my kids. But I want them to be aware of what's going on in the world, but I don't want them to be terrified. So I think my kids feel that they're safe. For example, today we were watching the news, and my 10-year-old said, "Wait, there's no school? Can I play Minecraft?"
Sounds like a healthy response.
Right. So I don't think he's too worked up about it. But last week, my middle schooler, their school was on lockdown. There was some incident with a parent, and they called the police. They came over the intercom, and they said, "This is not a drill." I don't know about you, but I would be terrified if I had been him in that school. But he said that he was pretty calm about it, and the teacher was very calm, and he went on with his day. I mean, it wasn't even the first thing he mentioned when he got home. But I think it's sad, but I think it's the world that they live in.
Well, and I can hear it in your voice. It's really the long-term implications of this that are going to tell the tale. I mean, these kids are growing up in a fundamentally different world, and it may not be something that causes huge anxiety today, depending on how this turns out. But over the long haul, this is what we're living with. Yvonne Condes has 2 kids in the LA Unified School District. One of the parents mobilizing as school was shut down in LA because of an alleged bomb threat.
In light of the heightened uncertainties abroad and a slightly softer expected path for inflation, the committee judged it appropriate to wait for more evidence, including some further improvement in the labor market.
That soft-spoken statement from the very measured chair of the Federal Reserve, Janet Yellen, was a big surprise back in September. No interest rate rise, despite seeming to telegraph an interest rate increase for weeks. But now it appears that the Fed will visit a place it hasn't been in 7 years, a rise in short-term benchmark interest rates. One small step for them, one giant leap for the global economy. Is this the end of an era for monetary policy and the end of a global consensus among central banks around the world? 2 top economists are with us. Richard Silla, professor of economics at New York University's Stern School of Business and co-author of A History of U.S. Interest Rates. Welcome.
Thanks. Glad to be here.
Also with us is Diane Swonk, senior managing director and chief economist at Messero Financial. Diane, welcome to you.
Always good to be here. Thank you.
All right, so let's start with the Fed's decision itself. Interest rates are going to go up. It seems to, I talked with someone very, very senior, formerly with the administration recently, who said the Fed has done such a good job of blunting the significance of this impact that even though it is the end of an era, it will go over like, you know, a whisper. It will have very, very little tangible effect. Richard?
Well, we'll have to wait and see. I mean, I think the move that everyone is expecting has been so well forecast. And, you know, the Fed said, I think a year ago, that they would raise in 2015. This is their last chance, really. They've been saying recently that they're going to raise, and I think it would be a tremendous shock if they did not raise.
Diane, is the Fed responding to job data? Is the Fed responding to inflation, which is the traditional response of the Fed? Or is the Fed just kind of going, we're getting really scared here doing this for so long, and they got to get out of it?
You know, it's all of the above. I think all of the above quite notably. One of the interesting issues is that during the height of the crisis, and it depends on which metrics you use, that the Fed really believed, and there is a lot of analysis supporting this, that rates, in order to allow the economy to come back more naturally in the wake of the crisis, they would have had to go down almost 5%. Well, the Federal Reserve considered zero the boundary. It's not something that all of our European counterparts have considered, although they're having some problems of their own with negative interest rates. And we couldn't go down below zero. So this many years later, actually it's 7 years to the day tomorrow of when they pushed rates to zero, they're looking at it saying, we're finally, it's not that rates have been at zero for so long, it's that we couldn't get them below that, so we had to keep them at zero longer and do other things with their balance sheet and try to help long-term rates come down. And now we're finally ready to move a little bit off that zero bound because the economy's healed enough that those negative rates aren't justified anymore, and maybe some little bit of positive rates. And the sense is that, you know, yes, it could be a whisper. The reality, though, is that we don't know how this interest rate change will ripple through the rest of the world, nor even our own bond markets. And I know that's a bit arcane to people thinking about it, but you could have distortions where all of a sudden short-term rates like 1 or 2 year loans spike, even as long-term rates remain low, as the Fed goes through these levers that it's using to change. It's so telling in and of itself. The Fed can't hit an actual target on short-term rates anymore. They can't just say, hey, the rate's at 0.25% now. They're going to say the rate's between 0.25% and 0.5%, and we're going to hit it, we think, pretty close to the middle part of that range, and we're going to do all the trading operations we can to have that happen, but it may miss a smidge here and there each day, and it may cause distortions in money market versus what you see at your bank account. And this is a little different world because they're using levers that they've never been able to test in the magnitude that we're talking about.
All right, let's talk about those levers. The levers are the asset purchases or the asset sales, right? They're going to take stuff from their balance sheets that they've been buying. They've been essentially buying the money that they're printing. At least that's the very cynical view of it. Now they're going to sell that slowly, and that selling is going to raise the interest rates, Richard?
Sure, John. When the Fed purchases assets, government bonds or mortgage-backed securities, that pushes their prices up and their yields down. So you're moving rates closer to lower levels, even zero. Now, when the Fed says its goal is to raise interest rates, it may sell some of those assets that it previously bought.
So there's more on the market. Because there's more on the market, you have to raise the yield to make them attractive.
Right. To get people to buy those securities the Fed is selling, the Fed may have to lower the price, which raises the yield, and that's how the Fed raises interest rates.
What if the rest of the economy says, okay, we think you're bluffing, the Fed, and nobody buys these things, and the interest rates really start to spike? Is that a scenario that could happen, Diane?
Yeah, the reason I'm jumping in is because these levers that the Fed is using are so different. Their actual balance sheet of what they carry, they're going to keep constant. They want to keep it elevated to be able to sort of keep an anchor on long-term rates. Say, if China were all of a sudden tomorrow to have to sell a lot of treasury bonds, they don't want long-term rates and mortgage rates to go with them to spike really quickly. On the flip side of it, though, what the Fed has said, we're going to use something that's really kind of not very liquid right now. It's called the reverse repo market. It gets into money market funds. This is very technical. We're going to use this market to try to move, create a floor on interest rates. We're going to raise interest rates a little bit through that floor, and the ceiling will be the interest that we charge on reserves that banks hold at the Federal Reserve, hoping that will put a ceiling on rates. But these mechanisms that the Fed has have been tested, but never tested in the sheer magnitude of what we'll need to see to move them economy-wide. And what we don't know are the ripple effects on other markets. We do know that most emerging markets are doing better than they once were, but it's very telling that China itself, as it moves to being more of a reserve currency, their currency is no longer pegged to the dollar. It's saying, listen, we want to peg it to a spectrum of currencies that we think more reflects it. It's that very fear that the dollar may move as the Fed raises interest rates that is causing China to sort of cushion the blow.
Richard Silla, professor of economics at New York University. Is the Fed responding to the global economy? I mean, are they concerned about these emerging markets that may have different impacts, or are they much more concerned about the U.S. economy, and that's really the gold standard.
I think that, the Fed is paying attention to the world, and, in some ways, if they looked at the whole world, they might not do this now, but they've created a lot of liquidity here in our U.S. economy. Our economy is doing not great, but better than most of the rest of the world, and the Fed is worried about inflation going up, and so they want to stop that before it happens, which is what they should do, I think. But I think this move is basically focused on the U.S. economy, and people in the rest of the world don't exactly like it all that much.
The era of near zero interest rates is probably over. Diane Swong, thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Richard Silla, thanks to you.
Thank you.
Richard Silla is professor of economics at New York University's Stern School of Business, co-author of A History of U.S. Interest Rates, and Diane Swonk is senior managing director and chief economist at Mesirow Financial. The reviews are coming in on Star Wars: The Force Awakens with its premiere in Los Angeles.